Hi, I'm Andy Miuch and you're watching A News. Here are the headlines. Wildfires continue to ravage Los Angeles. Death toll rises to 24. Gaza ceasefire deal final draft presented to Israel and Hamas. Volodymyr Zelensky urges faster weapon deliveries from allies. Thank you for tuning in. Wildfires continue to rage in Los Angeles. The death toll has risen to 24 as weather services warn of new winds that could fan the flames.
The United States National Weather Service warns that lingering dry weather and strong winds in Southern California will hinder efforts to contain the catastrophic wildfires. Fierce winds have been largely blamed for turning the wildfires into infernos that have leveled entire neighborhoods. Now the National Weather Service has issued red flag warnings, saying wind speeds of up to 50 miles per hour are expected in the early days of the week. Experts believe these forecasts place Los Angeles at risk of worsening conditions.
And as much as I wish I could give really good news about the weather, I do not have that news to convey. In fact, I have pretty bad news about the weather. The short term, we're having another Santa Ana event, as I mentioned, tonight into tomorrow. It isn't that strong, although it could still cause problems. We'll see another one, though, early in the week, and then another one beyond that, and toward midweek, that could actually, and I hesitate to say this, it could rival the strength of the original extreme wind event that drove these two urban conflagrations into populated areas.
Meanwhile, authorities say they're prepared for these weather conditions. The county is fighting the fires with federal assistance, using a combination of water trucks and aircraft dropping water and fire retardant.
Elevated critical fire weather conditions will continue through Wednesday. Please rest assured that your County of Los Angeles Fire Department will be prepared. These winds, combined with low humidities and low fuel moistures, will keep the fire threat in all of Los Angeles County very high.
More than 100,000 people in Los Angeles County have been ordered to evacuate, while another 87,000 face evacuation warnings.
Qatar gave Israel and Hamas a final draft of a deal to end the war in Gaza after a midnight breakthrough in talks attended by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's envoy. An official briefed on the negotiations told Reuters. The official said the text for a ceasefire and release of hostages was hammered out at talks in Doha, which included the chiefs of Israel's Mossad and Shin Bet spy agencies and Qatar's prime minister, as well as Steve Witkoff, who will become U.S. envoy when Trump takes office. Officials from the outgoing U.S. administration are also thought to have participated. Trump has said there would be, quote, hell to pay unless hostages held by Hamas are freed before he takes office on January 20th. Diplomatic row between Algeria and France intensified as Algiers rejected accusations of escalating tensions with Paris following a failed deportation of an influencer. Influencer Doualem was detained in Montpellier over a controversial TikTok video and sent to Algeria, but was returned the same day after Algiers refused him entry. French Interior Minister criticized Algeria for, quote, trying to humiliate France, while Algiers accused the French extreme right of spreading disinformation. Over in Croatia, Zoran Milanovic secured his re-election and 5 more years as president, with more than 74% of the vote in the second round of the presidential election.
Croatia's President Zoran Milanovic, backed by the opposition Social Democratic Party, has secured re-election with over 74% of the vote in the presidential runoff for another 5 years. Milanovic, a critic of the EU and NATO, defeated Dragan Primorac of the ruling Conservative Party, who received 25% after winning 49.1% in the first round. Milanovic had previously won 49.1% in the first round 2 weeks ago, narrowly missing an outright victory. In his victory speech, Milanovic expressed gratitude for the trust shown by the electorate.
Ovo je za mene osobno velik dan. This is a big day for me personally, and I perceive this triumph as a form of acknowledgement, or at the very least, validation of my efforts over the past 5 years, representing an act of public trust in me.
Primorac conceded defeat and thanked voters and Prime Minister Andrej Plenković for their support.
I did my best to let the citizens get to know me better, to get to know my programme to the extent it was possible. I presented a vision of a better, different and proud Croatia.
Milanovic's victory strengthens his political influence and extends his rivalry with Prime Minister Plenković. The two have regularly clashed, with Milanovic accusing his conservative HDZ of corruption, and Plenković calling Milanovic a threat to Croatia's standing.
US President-elect Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are expected to have a call in the coming days or weeks, a top Trump advisor said. Mike Waltz, the incoming national security advisor, told ABC he doesn't think it's realistic to expel every Russian from every inch of Ukrainian soil, even Crimea. Asked specifically about contacts between Trump and Putin, Waltz said he expects a call to take place in the coming days or weeks. The Kremlin said that there are no specific preparations yet underway for a meeting between Putin and Trump, but added that there was understanding and political will for one. US President-elect has repeatedly said he can bring a swift end to the nearly 3-year conflict without presenting a concrete plan. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on international allies to speed up weapon deliveries to Ukraine, citing the slow pace of aid in the ongoing war with Russia.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again urged global allies to fulfill their promises to provide essential military aid to Ukraine, particularly air defense systems to counter ongoing Russian aerial strikes. Zelensky also pointed out the delay in delivering promised air defense systems. Despite some progress in Ukraine's own military production, with 30% of the country's equipment now locally made, Zelensky emphasized that Western support has not been enough to counter the vast scale of Russian aggression. The latest attack by Russian forces has left around 23,000 households in Kherson without power. Over the past 24 hours, Russian forces launched 139 missile, drone and artillery attacks on Ukrainian military targets. Ukrainian forces repelled 46 out of 56 Russian attacks in the Pokrovsk sector with ongoing clashes. Zelensky also announced the capture of 2 North Korean soldiers in Russia's Kursk region and offered to exchange them for Ukrainian prisoners of war held by Russia.
Earlier, our Leila Masimova spoke on the Western military support to Kyiv and the latest in the Russia-Ukraine war with military expert and former Security Services of Ukraine officer Ivan Stupak.
We have a very important discussion ahead focusing on the ongoing war in Ukraine and the geopolitical shifts that could impact the country's future. Joining me today is Ivan Stupak, a military expert and former officer of the Security Service of Ukraine. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
My first question to you would be, Volodymyr Zelensky is often heard asking for more weapons from the West. What is the significance of his comments now?
Look, the issue with the weapon is a great because it's a war is ongoing about 3 years and lots of military equipment supplied from the West were destroyed. Some of the weapons were captured by Russians. So we do need it on a rolling way. So constantly we need lots of weapons. And this is also concerns about shells, ammunition for light weapon, different repairing parts. So we do need more and more and more. And as far I understand, and as far we understand in Ukraine, Western countries are not able to supply Ukraine with all types of weapons, munitions, and spare parts, which we do need right now. Especially we are we have problems with anti-aircraft systems because Russia Federation is able to conduct mass airstrikes on Ukrainian infrastructure objects, on Ukrainian different facilities, and we also suffering lots of problem of the strikes.
And how concerned are Ukrainians about Donald Trump entering the White House next week after the president-elect has previously suggested he may be less willing to support Ukraine?
Oh, it's a great... Look, lots of people in Ukraine now in some kind of turbulence because nobody, even some experts who specialized on United States, could not predict what kind of policy will come from Donald Trump, because he has some controversial statements starting from I will quit total support of Ukraine, and we've got other statements. Okay, I will continue to support Ukraine with weapons, with spare parts, with munition, etc., etc. And still, right now, we are staying in a waiting or standby position in Ukraine. Of course, it hurts some morale in Ukraine, but I have to confess, 3 years of war, and we are trying to be more optimistic and more realistic, and we do understand that Donald Trump could significantly change his policy of Ukraine.
And how is Zelensky likely to react if he does not get the support he hopes from Donald Trump and indeed from the Western powers?
Okay, Ukrainian politics, and especially Mr. Zelensky, he expect that Western countries, I mean Western Europe countries, will continue support Ukraine with all kinds of munition, which I described before, even if Donald Trump will stop supplying Ukraine from United States. But we have to also admit that United States help support was significant, and it could not be compared with possibilities of European countries. I mean that United States supply was incredibly big, and the European countries, there are lots of European countries, and for example, Great Britain, France, Germany, they are not able to cover supplies from United States. And one more, during the last months, Mr. Zelensky stated for several times that we are ready to start some peace negotiation with Russia side. We are flexible in our willingness to find peace solution. He also stated that Ukraine is not able to reach borders of 1991. Ukraine is not able to recapture territories which is currently under Russian control. So it's lots of signals to Western politics, United States, European countries, also to Asia politics. I mean China, I mean Middle East, I mean India. He shows his willingness to make some compromise and to find peace solution.
And Trump is expected to hold a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin shortly. Advisors have already suggested it is unrealistic to expel all Russian soldiers from Ukrainian soil. How is President Zelensky likely to respond to this?
Look, I told before, we are totally clearly see that we are not able to repulse Russian soldiers from previously captured Ukrainian territories. I mean, Zaporizhia region, Kherson region, Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk, etc. We are not able, and we do understand that Mr. Trump, he should have at least one or maybe two meetings with Vladimir Putin, and to find some points to start peace negotiation process. Now, currently, we can see that the peace negotiation process is on baby steps, small steps, and these steps are not able to be seen by other people from all of the world. We could see it by some indirect signals. And from my side, I do expect that some process could be seen not earlier than March 2025.
If Trump's skepticism about further aid to Ukraine is reflected in US policy, how far is Zelensky likely to depend on European leaders to secure the support his country desperately needs?
Look, we are totally in guarantees from United States, but also, on the other hand, we do understand that any guarantees could be realized in real life. For example, we've got a Budapest Memorandum. We expected that countries which signed this memorandum will protect Ukraine, but it's not happened. So we should be more realistic and understand that guarantees sometimes not work. And we have to rely only on ourselves and maybe on some our more closer allies or some our neighbors, for example, Poland, for example, Baltic countries, Estonia, Lithuania, maybe Scandinavian countries, but it all depends on policy background of these countries connected with some time period. And one more, we also should rely on ourselves in military production. If we will be able to produce at least several thousand of long-range missiles per year, it will be best guarantee for Ukraine that Russia side will never try to annex some Ukrainian territories or try to invade Ukraine one more time.
Thank you, Ivan Stepak, for your insights today. It is clear Ukraine's path forward will depend heavily on what happens elsewhere in the world. We will continue to monitor these developments closely.
About 300 North Korean troops deployed to Russia have been killed, with another 2,700 injured in combat against Ukrainian forces, according to a South Korean lawmaker briefed by the country's spy agency. Lee Song-kwon said their rising number of casualties is attributed to a lack of understanding of modern warfare and the way Russia used the North Korean military. Citing the National Intelligence Service, Lee added that North Korean authorities appear to have called for its troops to commit suicide to evade capture. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Kyiv is ready to hand over North Korean soldiers to their leader Kim Jong-un if he can organize their exchange for Ukrainians held captive in Russia. Zelensky said earlier on Saturday that Ukraine had captured 2 North Korean soldiers in Russia's Kursk region, the first time Ukraine has announced the capture of North Korean soldiers alive since their entry into the nearly 3-year-old war last autumn. Ukrainian and Western assessments say that some 11,000 troops from Russia's ally North Korea have been deployed in the Kursk region to support Moscow's forces. Russia has neither confirmed nor denied their presence. The Kremlin has warned that new U.S. sanctions on Russia's energy sector could destabilize global markets, vowing to minimize their impact. Washington says the measures aim to cut off Moscow's funding for the war in Ukraine, potentially costing billions monthly.
The Kremlin stated that the newest US sanctions targeting Russia's energy sector could destabilize global markets, and Moscow would take all necessary steps to reduce their effects.
It is clear that the United States will continue to try to undermine the positions of our companies in non-competitive ways, but we expect that we will be able to counteract this.
On Friday, the US Treasury announced expanded sanctions targeting Gazpromneft, Surgutneftgaz, and 183 vessels shipping Russian oil. These measures aim to slash Russia's revenues used to finance the war in Ukraine. A US official stated the sanctions could cost Russia billions of dollars monthly if fully enforced. The sanctions have already prompted Chinese and Indian refiners, key Russian oil buyers, to seek alternative crude supplies. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre reinforced the US position.
We took aim today in your question at Russia's largest resources of revenue. and impose significant sanctions on the Russian energy sector. These sanctions certainly target both Russian oil and LNG, and we expect our actions to cost Russia upwards to billions of dollars per month.
She added that President Biden reaffirmed U.S. support for Ukraine in a call with President Zelensky following the cancellation of a planned meeting in Rome to address wildfires in Southern California.
The State Maritime and Port Agency of Azerbaijan has provided clarification regarding the detention of 3 Azerbaijani vessels off the coast of Eritrea. Agency spokesperson stated that on November 7th, Caspian Marine Services BV received news from its Azerbaijan branch about the detention of 3 of its ships by Eritrean authorities. The agency informed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and notified the Eritrean Maritime Authority, the International Maritime Organization, Eritrea's permanent representation in the CIS, and the British Embassy with all necessary details. Earlier reports had confirmed the detention of the 3 Azerbaijani ships and their crews near Eritrea. President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev arrived in United Arab Emirates for a working visit at the invitation of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the UAE. A guard of honor was lined up for the President of Azerbaijan at Zayed International Airport in Abu Dhabi. President Ilham Aliyev was welcomed by Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week 2025 is set to start, bringing together leaders and experts from around the world and serving as a platform for discussions and collaboration aimed at addressing urgent challenges facing the planet. During the week, the 16th Zayed Sustainability Prize Awards ceremony will be held, with 11 awards being given for efforts in building an inclusive and sustainable world. The event will pay tribute to the legacy of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the first president of the UAE, known as the Father of the Nation. With over 3,500 expected to participate in the events, Abu Dhabi is poised to become the hub for global dialogue on sustainable development. The South Caucasus stands at a crossroads. As Azerbaijan and Armenia navigate their path toward peace, one lingering question remains. What role does the OSCE Minsk group play in this evolving narrative? Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev says it needs to be dissolved.
The South Caucasus, a crossroads of ancient history and modern geopolitics, has long been a hotbed of tension. At the heart of this unrest lies the decades-old conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, sparked by Armenia's occupation of Karabakh, an internationally recognized part of Azerbaijan. This conflict left behind a legacy of grief, with countless lives lost and lingering wounds that continue to shape the future of both nations. In an attempt to mediate peace, the OSCE Minsk Group was established in 1992. Yet despite the end of open hostilities after the Second Karabakh War in 2020, the group's effectiveness and relevance remain subjects of heated debate. President Aliyev recently reignited this debate, calling for the Minsk Group's dissolution as a necessary step towards lasting peace with Armenia.
The information that recently appeared in the media, namely the fascist statements of the first president of Armenia, once again confirms what we have known for quite a long time in principle, that Armenia was not going to vacate a single centimetre of Azerbaijani territory. They felt quite comfortable, as they thought, receiving billions of dollars worth of free arms from one ally and political and moral support from the other two. Thus, all 3 co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk Group during the period for which I am responsible were unequivocally on the side of the occupier. I am telling you this as a person who has been conducting negotiations within the framework of the Minsk Group since 2004 and has met with this troika a great number of times. Therefore, of course, we could not expect to get these territories back through dialogue. Neither could we expect to restore our territorial integrity through dialogue.
The OSCE Minsk group, tasked with resolving the Karabakh conflict, proposed several plans over the years, yet none succeeded in breaking the deadlock. 1997, a comprehensive agreement was proposed, but founded amid Armenia's internal political turmoil. September 1997, a step-by-step deal suggested phased troop withdrawals and the introduction of peacekeepers, but was again rejected by Armenia. November 1998, the Common State deal offered Karabakh broad autonomy, which Azerbaijan turned down due to sovereignty concerns. 2007, the Madrid Principles were unveiled but failed to gain traction. 2009, at the G8 summit, the US, Russia, and France presented the basic principles, but progress remained elusive. 2020, during the Second Karabakh War, Azerbaijan reclaimed its territories through military victory, sidelining the Minsk group. President Ilham Aliyev has underscored that a peace treaty hinges on the formal dissolution of the Minsk group and constitutional amendments to affirm Azerbaijan's territorial integrity.
I hope that all our conditions regarding the peace treaty will be accepted, because there are no extraordinary issues in these conditions. The abolition of the Minsk group, the amendment of the constitution. Without these, a peace treaty is impossible. If Armenia does not need a peace treaty, we do not need it either.
The Minsk group's critics include former diplomats who have described its operations as largely ceremonial. Former US Ambassador Richard E. Hoagland remarked,
"We stayed in five-star hotels where we were usually assigned suites on the executive floor that gave us access to a private dining room and full bar at no additional expense. We always sought out the best restaurants in the cities where we found ourselves. We lived well while we showed the OSCE flag and reminded Baku and Yerevan that the Minsk group exists. But to be blunt, very, very little ever got accomplished."
Since the Second Karabakh War, Azerbaijan and Armenia have engaged in direct talks focused on 5 principles, including mutual recognition of borders and respect for territorial integrity. In December 2023, the two nations took a pivotal step by agreeing to exchange prisoners of war and work towards normalizing relations. This breakthrough was followed in April 2024 by a historic agreement to demarcate their shared border, with Armenia returning several villages to Azerbaijan. These milestones, achieved through direct negotiations, cast further doubt on the Minsk group's role and the true interests of its member states in the current peace process.
The Korea Times published an article about international carbon market growth potential and how the 29th UN Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan achieved significant progress on it. Kim Sung-woo of Kim and Chang noted that COP29 established rules for carbon credit trading and emissions reduction projects, boosting the international market. Japan and Singapore have already begun projects, while Korea aims to meet part of its 2030 climate goals through international mitigation. U.S. federal prosecutors have requested at least 15 years in prison for former Senator Bob Menendez, citing the extraordinary nature of his crimes. Menendez was convicted last summer on 16 corruption charges, including taking bribes and acting as a foreign agent for Egypt while chairing the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Prosecutors noted this as the first case of a senator abusing a committee leadership role or serving as a foreign agent while in office. Menendez, who resigned after his conviction, is seeking a reduced sentence, citing his ruined reputation and personal hardships. Tucked away in central Tokyo, the Extinct Media Museum offers a nostalgic journey into the world of vintage technology. The museum showcases a wide array of obsolete gadgets, from Betacams to floppy disks, allowing visitors to experience firsthand tools that once shaped the media landscape.
The Extinct Media Museum in Tokyo is a tribute to the gadgets and devices that have since been replaced by modern technology. With items dating back over a century, Including a 1916 Japanese-produced Lily film camera, the museum offers a fascinating glimpse into the past. 59-year-old Mika Matsuda, a visitor to the museum, describes the experience as a walk down memory lane.
It is fascinating not only for generations unfamiliar with these items, but also for those who lived through those times. Seeing these pieces feels like I'm having a flashback of our own lives. It reminded me of how things were back then. I used to have so much fun. It's such an interesting museum that brings up those memories to people.
For many visitors, the museum is more than just a place to see relics of the past. Barbara Asker, the museum's deputy curator, explains that the collection is meant to remind us of the inevitable obsolescence of technology.
The museum was founded on the principle that all media other than paper and stone will die out, so all the current popular media equipment will eventually disappear, just like the items we display here. The purpose is to showcase those items and share the fun with everyone.
What truly sets the Extinct Media Museum apart is its interactive approach. Visitors don't just observe old gadgets, but are also invited to touch, hold, and engage with them using all 5 senses. Barbara Asker explains how this tactile connection enhances the museum experience.
You can't really tell the weight of this camera just by looking at it. You wouldn't know how heavy it is or how you have to carry it. Equipment often has its own smell too. There is so much you can learn just by holding it, such as its weight, texture and scent. We want visitors to experience these items using all 5 senses, not just through glass.
The museum's collection is primarily made up of donations from visitors like Hisashi Ito, a 56-year-old automobile designer. Recently, he donated a handheld watch and cassette tapes from his personal collection.
I'd be happy if people found them interesting. Even if I kept those gadgets at home, they would probably just be thrown away when I die. So it's better to share them and let people enjoy them.
The Extinct Media Museum is not only a place to view artifacts of a bygone era, but also an opportunity to experience the tangible history of technology. With admission priced at approximately 2,000 yen, equivalent to $12.70, it's a thought-provoking and interactive experience. A visit to this unique museum is a chance to connect with the past, preserving memories before they too become history.
Well, that's all from us for now. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching A News.